to, and you can type that into the chat and we will read that here for the group. Same with media. If you have a question, just raise your hand and I'll give you the mic and you can ask it here. We're going to start off with statements. We're going to begin with Texas Tech President Lawrence Skuvanek, and then we'll go into some statements, and after we finish with the statements, you guys can be prepared to ask questions. Dr. Skuvanek.
Thank you, Taylor. Is this on? It is? Okay. Well, good afternoon. I want to begin by saying that at this moment, I'm filled with a great sense of gratitude and thanks. Gratitude that no one has been injured during this incident, and thanks for the extraordinary support we've received from so many. And I do want to take the time to thank all of those who've helped us through the last few hours. I want to begin with my colleagues on campus. The Office of Marketing and Communications, Noel Sloan, and all the different offices within operations, and the Office of the Provost. And also a special thanks to the Texas Tech Police Department, the Texas Tech Fire Marshal, the Lubbock Police Department, the Texas Department of Public Safety. Last evening, HEB reached out to us, and then United Supermarkets providing food for the students who no longer had access to dining facilities. The City of Lubbock, Lubbock Fire Rescue, Lubbock Power and Light, and the State Fire Marshal and ATF. Also, I would like to thank all of those, our state representatives and federal representatives who've reached out with offers of help. Senator Perry, Representative Tepper, Speaker Burrows, the chairman of the House Committee on Higher Ed, Terry Wilson, Senator Cruz, and Congressman Judge Carter all reached out asking what could they do to help us, and I'm very grateful for that support. We began, this issue arose around 6:40 last evening, and we gathered in the emergency operations conference room on campus, and early on decided that we would be canceling classes today and tomorrow, effectively providing an early start to spring break. People worked throughout the night dealing with issues of campus safety, power, heating, cooling, and water. And so many were engaged throughout the whole night in dealing with those issues. So at this time, I would like to turn this over to Captain Ivy to give a more detailed timeline of the events that transpired.
Thank you, President. Yes, yesterday around 6:40 p.m., we started receiving calls of some power outages around campus. And then around approximately 6:57, we started receiving phone calls of smoke coming out of a manhole at the engineering key. Once our officers responded, they did see the smoke and some fire coming out of the manhole. At that time, they reached out to the Texas Tech Fire Marshals and the Lubbock Fire Department to respond on scene. Our officers then secured the perimeter of the area of the engineering key to make sure everyone's safety was first priority. We did reach out to the Lubbock Police Department and the Lubbock Department of Public Safety to help us control the perimeter around campus to make sure everybody was in a safe distance of the incident. And at that time, our officers turned over the investigations to the Texas Tech Fire Marshal, and I'll turn that over to Mike Keenan.
Thank you, Captain Ivy. My name's Michael Kennan. Yes, once we were called, we arrived on scene a little before 7. Lubbock Fire and Rescue was already on scene. We experienced several below grade vault failures with transformers, and so we immediately started calling for extra resources on our part, but Lubbock Fire was here, and then City of Lubbock and the State Fire Marshal's office was contacted. Once the State Fire Marshal's office got on scene, we were also contacted by the ATF, and they were brought in as a resource as well. The lead role for the investigation will be the State Fire Marshal's office for Texas.
Yeah, so first I just want to compliment really and echo some of the comments that have been made, and just compliment the great working relationship that not only Lubbock Fire Rescue but the City of Lubbock as a whole has with Texas Tech University. We spend a lot of time, whether it's with Tech Fire Marshal's office, the Office of Emergency Management at Texas Tech, along with our Office of Emergency Management, a lot of the other first responders within the city, training, preparing for a number of different incidents that may occur. And so while this one certainly was very unique, we don't see what we saw last night every day, thankfully. Those great relationships that we have built, that we have had long-standing, and really the training that we've done together really helped prepare and is a testament to why an incident that certainly could have been a lot worse went as well as it did. So certainly want, from our perspective, from City of Lubbock, Lubbock Fire Rescue, we want to thank all of our partners that we worked with last night for really just an outstanding job all the way across the board. As far as our response, I think the timeline they laid out, our initial response was actually to a call or a smell of natural gas that quickly transitioned. We were notified of fire that was issuing from a manhole cover in the engineering key on campus. Once that was observed, that response was upgraded to what we would call a full structure response. And then as fire began to issue from numerous other manhole covers or underground vaults, if you will, across campus, that was then upgraded to a second alarm response. So at the height, we probably had close to between 40 to 50 firefighters on scene, really all the way across the board. So the first thing I really want to emphasize is, and we've had a lot of questions on this, is as of right now, there is no danger to the public. There is, whether you're on campus or off campus, the area is safe. Anywhere that there may be hazard, or we're still working, or there is any kind of danger, has been blocked off. And so for the general public, the rest of the campus, there is no danger. All of the active fire that we know of, been able to identify, is gone. It is out. We can't rule out that there may be some small areas with still some smoldering fire underground, but again, there's no evidence at all that there is any active fire. And so really, the focus of what we're trying to do in conjunction with LP&L right now is make those underground areas safe so that Lubbock Power and Light can get in there and start doing the work that they need to do to start restoring power to the campus. And so there's really, part of that is, again, making sure that the atmosphere has cooled off, there's no active fire, and then the second part of that is the atmospheric monitoring. We still have, as of probably in the last hour or so, we are still finding some residual natural gas readings and a lot of other, or at least several other toxic gases that we would expect to find in an area that was involved in fire. And so I know we're working with them to ventilate those areas. I can't tell you how long that will take, but as soon as we can make that atmosphere safe, again, these guys are going to get in there and they're going to start doing the work to start restoring power. So,
thank you. I'm Matt Rose with Lubbock Power and Light, and we've already kind of walked through a general timeline, but I want to take a second to kind of walk through what we saw on our end last night, starting at 6:45. At approximately 6:45, we had a circuit that serves the north and eastern portions of campus. We had a circuit trip offline. That was a automatic response that our system performs when it detects an issue in the area. So that's a function that is supposed to take place and took place at 6:45. So the initial call outs for outages came from that initial circuit tripping offline. Starting at about 7:30, similar actions took place in various circuits from the Brandon substation on campus. Again, these actions were performed automatically by our system because they detected there was an issue, and they do this in order to shut down those facilities to not further damage them or, God forbid, expand the fire or the damage that may take place. So at 7:36, we had a series of circuits that also tripped offline, and that affected a total of 123 meters. Initially it was 39 and then 123. At 8 o'clock, and I should say this, from the minute that we got that first alert, all available crews were on the scene at Texas Tech to investigate and do what they could to try to mitigate damage. At 8 o'clock, crews, we began manually taking down circuits again as a preventative measure to make sure that we keep the area safe. That's one of the first things we have to do so that the next steps can take place. When we took those manual circuits down for safety, One circuit affected 1,516 customers. Another circuit affected 1,933 customers. It was a momentary issue for those two circuits. Within 30 minutes, they were restored because we switched them to other safe adjacent circuits. And then starting at basically midnight, our crews were able to start going into very specific cabinets and manholes to start restoring power. And so from midnight until 3 a.m., as they got word from these good folks here that they could safely get in and start performing work in areas, they did that. And so by 3 a.m., we had restored every single meter that was able to be restored. Now, there are 50 meters that are still off on the Tech campus, and they'll remain off until we get through this period of investigation and we make sure that it's safe to go restore those. But we're working very closely with Texas Tech. One of our individuals is in their Emergency Operations Center. We're obviously working very closely with the city's operations in their Emergency Operations Center. But Tech is aware of these 50 meters that would be off until they're safe to turn back on. One of the things that I want to really highlight, and it's been mentioned here, and I'll point out that Cody Morris is with us. He's the manager of our transmission and distribution area. Those are all of our linemen. Whenever you have an event like this, it's obviously scary to look at, but the results can be even scarier. And so sitting here today, having none of our employees that suffered any bodily damage or worse is really a blessing. And the fact that this was able to be contained by the good work of all of these people involved and not cause greater structural damage is impressive. It really is, because an event like this can obviously cascade and cause a lot worse damage than we saw. That being said, we're taking this very, very seriously. And there are state officials that are on the scene. There's any number of officials doing investigations right now, and our crews are right there working with them. And as soon as we're able to start restoring power to those remaining 50, we will do so, as safely and quickly as we possibly can. One final thing that I will add for those that are watching that are here in the Lubbock area. Tomorrow, we're expecting to have very high winds. These winds are expected to be sustained above 60 miles an hour. That level of wind sustained is going to do damage to overhead lines. There's just no getting around it. The winds themselves and the debris that it carries, it's going to hurt those lines. And whenever we go through these processes, it's always asked, why don't you underground all your lines? And I think you saw from last night's event that whether a line is above ground or underground, it can sustain damage. And our folks have to then go out there and safely get it restored. And so where we had 30 members of our underground crew and 15 members of our substation crew working around the clock last night, we have our full overhead crew plus additional folks that'll be ready for tomorrow and the outages that will inevitably come. Just remember that our crews are out there. If you suffer an outage, you don't need to call us. We know about it. We will go restore it as quickly and safely as possible. But just know that our folks are out there 24/7, doing their job, keeping their crews safe, keeping the public safe, and I want to say thank you to them, and I also want to say thank you to all the other first responders that came out last night and made sure that this was an event that was minimized as much as it possibly could be. Lacey.
Hi, I'm Lacey Nobles. I'm the Director of Communications and Public Engagement for the City of Lubbock. I want to reiterate what everyone has said up here. We're incredibly grateful that there were no injuries to anyone on campus, any of the crews working. The City of Lubbock's main role is to help support, and we stood up our Emergency Operations Center last night as a way to help monitor and offer support to Texas Tech and to LFR and LPD, and we're just grateful for the community partners we have with them, with the departments within the city, and also TxDOT came out and helped, and we will continue to help monitor and offer support wherever we can to the crews and agencies on scene.
Hi, thank you all for being here today and for answering all of our questions too. We appreciate it. It's helping a lot out there with information. So we have a question about the, if you could, anyone who could describe the underground cooling and heating systems on campus and how they work? Thank you.
I'm not the expert by any means, but the majority of all of our heating and cooling is done by steam and chilled water. The tunnel systems run to almost all of the buildings. So please understand, these transformer vaults were totally separate from our tunnels. There was we didn't have any interception of the electrical issues that we had last night into our tunnel system. We were very fortunate with that.
This may also go to you, Mike. There's been a lot of concern about the color of the particular smoke that's been seen in a lot of the viral videos. I know that can come from different substances. Could you possibly describe what may have caused the color of the smoke that people were seeing?
So I know Nick can also speak to this as well, but I mean, we had an electrical fire, and anytime you have an electrical fire of that magnitude, you're going to have different colors of smoke, and the flames could be different as well.
Yeah, and just to echo what he said, I think this one was very unique. Most of the fires I think that people see are structures that are burning, a lot of wood, fibrous type materials, those common things that we just see in our households every day. And this was certainly different. These were electrical vaults, underground electrical facilities with probably metal fires. Most metals will burn. Copper burns green. Likely that's where we were seeing, I think everybody has seen the green flame coming out, a lot of purple smoke, and it's really just, whether it's the insulation, the wiring, or some other things that I don't even know that we know everything that was down in those vaults, but those are certainly indicative of things that would be burning. I'm not going to say it's common that we see that every day, certainly unique in a lot of ways, but I would say indicative of the type of materials that we would expect to find in those electrical vaults.
Hi, folks. Cameron Mendoza with KMAC, KLBK, and EverythingLubbock.com. What percentage of campus is currently without power, and can you speak to UMC and the Health Sciences Center and how they were affected as well by this?
So as I say, there are 50 meters that remain off, and will remain off until we get the go-ahead from officials that it's safe for our crews to go in there and restore. It could be one of two things. It could be, in order to restore a particular area, our crew has to go down into one of these cabinets or one of these, make sure that it's clear of any natural gas or anything that could cause damage. We also have to make sure that when we energize that meter, that everything up and down that line is safe, that there's no faults there, that we're not going to energize a meter that's going to then cause a fire. We're still in the very early stages of this, and they're going through their investigation in terms of the root cause. And we certainly, our guys on the ground have, their feelings on this, but we're going to let that play out. And Cody, I would say right now, what would you say the percentage is that's off with those 50 meters?
Yeah, we're probably close to 40%.
40% off? And so that number will remain until we get the green light to go through. We basically did everything that we could do up until that 3 a.m. point. And now our crews are just waiting for the go-ahead.
Does that include UMC and the Health Sciences Center as well, or is that separate?
No, I believe that's separate. That's separate. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you, all of you guys, for talking with us. This question is probably going to President Skubanek. Just tell me about the response and how important it was to get those students out safely during this process, because a lot of things were moving on and it's a very unusual situation. So just tell me about that.
We regularly have practice exercises to prepare us for moments like this. And you learn from an experience like this. Not having any power presented some unique challenges, but our first concern was the students, our staff and faculty. So we made a decision that we would suspend classes, and then we were concerned about how do we safely evacuate these students from the campus. It was dark, there were no street lights. The police did a great job of monitoring intersections and traffic, and we recommended to the students that they wait until daylight to try to leave. We also had to make accommodations for those students who were not planning to leave for spring break. I think we secured a few hundred rooms around town for those students who cannot stay in the dorms. I mentioned before HEB and United, who provided food for the dining, and we also provided numbers for students to reach out for a number of issues. We have some students with medical issues that required power for the devices they used, and that was provided. And then also on campus, we have a lot of laboratory equipment and animal care facilities. We have temporary power that sustain those operations. And I was on a plane when I heard about this, and we made those decisions shortly after I arrived on campus. My colleagues were already gathered in the administration building, and we left after midnight, and I know other people worked throughout the night. And I expressed this sentiment earlier. I couldn't have been more proud of the professionalism that people exhibited through this incident.
How is the ATF helping or assisting in this?
So the lead investigation is going to be through the State Fire Marshal's office. They've got their electrical engineers here as well. But the ATF, they have invaluable tools that can speed up this investigation process. They have investigators that are forensically, they do the forensics for many electrical fires and issues of that nature. So they're hopefully, and they usually work extremely well with all the agencies involved, but they have some excellent tools and ways to speed up this process.
In terms of the underground vaults, I know people are, of course, obviously familiar with the stuff that's above ground. Is the underground vaults, first, any different than what we see above ground? And two, are they specialty in such a way that this could delay the amount of time it takes to get things back to normal on campus more so than it would on a normal basis?
Sure. Fundamentally, it is the same concept above and below ground. But if you go below ground, there are precautions that you have to take. And so we know that these cabinets, just by the very nature of gravity, are going to fill with water and various different things throughout the year. And so that equipment in those vaults is specially tuned for that, so that we don't have these types of issues. When you have a system that's underground, you're going to be saved for some common day outages, high winds or a tree limb falling or a squirrel getting into the line. Those types of things, you're going to be okay. But when there is an issue, it does sometimes take longer to identify and get that stuff cut back on because you're having to go down and locate. If I have a line that runs down 19th Street and we see that line goes out, a crew can go run that line and identify where that fault is. If there's a fault underground, it can take longer for them to identify. And so one of the things that we're going to have to do is once we get the green light to go down in is to really make an assessment of how much damage there was to that equipment underground. We don't have a full accounting of that yet. We know that in areas that we've gone in that we've seen stuff that's burned up. We know that over at the Brandon station, there's a room in there that saw a fire. But until we can get in there and really do a true accounting of what the damage is, we won't know. I don't anticipate that it's going to be too much of a delay once we get that green light, fixing all this and getting it back online. But until we get in there, we're kind of running blind for the second.
So ultimately, I know it's still very early in the investigation, but do you know what caused that explosion or those explosions?
At this time, we don't have any idea. We'll have to wait until the investigation's completely finished.
Yeah, and there's a lot of the areas that they're going to need to get to that just aren't safe. They're not accessible right now, and so over time, as those become accessible, whether it's LP&L or the investigators that are here, then they'll be able to get in there and start work. But I would think it's going to be some time before we have some answers there.
And I'll just say real quick, and I know I've said this in various different ways, but whenever we have an outage of this nature, what we try to do is isolate the incident as much as we possibly can to get it down to just as small an area as possible. And when we take the customers and try to get them on adjacent circuits in those that we can bring their power back up. And so those 50 meters that remain out, that's really that condensed section of meters that we've isolated. And then, like I say, we'll work back from there.
And were there any hazards to citizens in the surrounding areas around campus, that Tech Terrace area, Heart of Lubbock, any of those areas nearby?
No, and again, part of that goes to what I said before was the great work of everybody that was on scene. You know, we very quickly isolated the areas, whether it was Tech PD, LPD, Tech Fire Marshal's office. I mean, just I'm sure I'm forgetting some people that were on scene, but you know, we very quickly, we were all on the same page and working towards, like President Skubinik said, evacuating the students and then isolating those areas. Putting barricades, blockades to areas of campus that we didn't want people. And so, again, the part of that, when I said before that this was a very successful incident, is because those things happen very quickly. Again, because of the preparedness for Texas Tech. I'll tell you, I'm not a tech student, but I'm signed up for the tech alerts. I was in my living room and I knew there was something going on before we even knew there was something going on. I saw the instructions that were going out to the students through their tech alert system throughout the evening, giving them very specific instructions, again, that helped prevent a lot of those problems. So again, I can't say enough about how many good things happened from all of the agencies that were involved last night to protect or prevent exactly the situation that you're talking about. So.
There's a question online, either Mike or Captain Ivy. They wanted a little bit of clarification on whether it was one explosion or multiple explosions.
So our officers responded to 3 different locations. Is that
There was 3 locations, but I think we had, at this time, we know there was 5 actual transformer vaults. I think that's where we're at right now.
How many dormitories were evacuated, or buildings? How many of those? And can you be specific to which ones?
Because there was no power in any dormitory and students were going to be leaving for spring break, the plan was to evacuate all dormitories. We were aware of those students who were going to stay, so that's why we made the additional provisions to accommodate them off campus in rooms we secured around town. So we moved all students from campus.
This is for President Skubinik. We obviously have a buffer now with spring break, which helps quite a bit with this situation. But if the situation continues past spring break, has there been discussions of change in modalities in that circumstance?
Obviously something we'll have to deal with, but I think we need to hear from the experts first as to what the timeline would be, and we'll probably know more in a few days. Based on their input, we'll begin to have those discussions. We've gone through this before at spring break.
So there's a question online of how many people were displaced. Do you want to answer that question, or perhaps you, Matt?
Well, we moved all the students. There's probably 7,000 to 8,000 who leave, but I think only a few hundred, Noel, were we concerned about accommodating off campus?
Yeah, they had the option to stay, encouraging them to leave at daylight. We're also working on moving up shuttle schedules from campus to the metro areas that were scheduled for spring break. So we've made a number of accommodations if they weren't leaving, for making accommodations at hotels in town. If they were leaving, we've working to reschedule some shuttles if they were planning on those accommodations as well.
Are there
I'd
any
like to
more
add something real quick. I just got word that some City of Lubbock libraries are opening their community rooms to students if they need a place to study or a place to have Wi-Fi. So the Mahon and Groves Library are open till 4 today for that, and from 9 to 6 tomorrow in the Patterson Library as well, and those are in the community rooms of those libraries.
That's great.
We have one more question online for Mike. It says Mike said that there were 5 faults in response to the number of explosions. Does that mean that there were 5 fires?
Well, at each vault, when we had the catastrophic failure, we did have fire in those vaults. So, I mean, at this point, we know of 5 that we did have.
And I'll just take 1 second to say this public service announcement. What we saw last night, when you saw the stuff coming out of the manholes and the reaction to the electricity, electricity is dangerous. It is an extremely dangerous element. We know that it allows us to do everything that we do in our everyday lives, but we should always be very respectful of it. And whether it be a dramatic light show like we saw last night, or it just simply be a line that's laying on the ground, always assume that a line is energized. Always assume that it can cause you grave bodily injury. Please do not ever take it upon yourself to try to move a line or to fix an issue. Please call Lubbock Power and Light. Our linemen and our crews are the best in the world at this. They do it every single day. So please let our folks do their work. So as you go throughout tomorrow in these high winds, please be careful around electricity, because it's important, but it's also dangerous.
Since there was a gas odor smelled, was Atmos called?
Yes, Atmos did respond. To the gas service that is on Texas Tech University, while obviously Atmos supplies Texas Tech University, those mains, I guess, terminate at what's called a master meter, where then it's separated and distributed across the university. So the lines on the university are Texas Tech. It's not Atmos that are responsible for or own the lines that are on Texas Tech University. But they did, again, another partner that I probably failed to mention before. They've been tremendous and helped. They assisted us quite a bit last night just with atmospheric monitoring as we went through the dorms, any areas where people might be sleeping or living. That was one of our priorities, to echo President Skubinik. The life safety issue was number one, make sure the students were safe. And they did, tremendous job helping us with that last night. I know today we're doing some subsurface monitoring, helping us within the soil to see if there were any gas leaks. They have trucks that drive around really across the city. Most people never see them. That sniff, that are looking continuously for natural gas leaks, and they had those resources there last night, driving across campus to make sure that we didn't have any natural gas danger. So yeah, absolutely, Atmos was involved, and again, another great partner that was a tremendous help last night.
And last night, can we confirm if there was like a gas leak or not right now? They're still looking, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's part of in the investigation. We know there was natural gas present in a lot of those areas. Was that a result of some, an explosion or electrical or a fire, or was it the other way around? I mean, all those are things that we're looking at. So we know it was present. We don't necessarily know why. That being said, we are confident that, all the gas service has been shut off to anything that's in that area. So there is, no additional danger other than, any residual gas that may still be down there that we're working right now to remove. So,
thank you.
Are those transformers regularly serviced and or replaced if necessary? And if so, do we know when the last time was that they were?
They are. We have a preventative maintenance program where we go through and we repair aging transformers. And we're also out there every single day replacing transformers that fail in any level. So we're doing that on a constant basis. We've been on the tech campus, as I think maybe a week or so ago, just doing work in other areas. So our linemen are constantly out there doing that. Our engineers are constantly putting in place designs to upgrade and beef up the system, because you're constantly having to work against it. One of the things one issue that we have here in Lubbock and West Texas with the high winds and the storms that we have, hail, is that a lot of times a storm will come through and it will cause damage, but it won't necessarily cause enough damage to cause an outage. And so we won't have an indication on our end that there is an issue with the transformer or something of that nature, and then a week to 10 days later, that transformer fails. And so anytime we have a big storm, we always expect that the next couple of weeks, we're going to be responding to equipment failures across the city. But it's literally an everyday process as we're switching out equipment.
Thank you. And then I know some are wondering if the NCAA Selection Sunday watch parties at the USA, is that still going on?
So right now there's not HVAC in United Supermarkets Arena, and they're working on that. So we haven't made a final decision, but we're going to have to deal with that. Hopefully we'll get the HVAC up and that can proceed.
And if there's no more questions, we'll go ahead and wrap the press conference, but we will continue updating you guys through our media releases, so just be aware of that. Thanks, everybody, for coming.